fundamentally, these are the two formats in which things are happening. And in India, the social event space actually has taken off post 2005. That's when you had these really larger than life things which started happening. You had weddings which had a lot of performers, you had weddings which had a lot of technical glitz into it. And that's when people started hiring professional event managers to come and do this job. Now, there was a real gap that existed because corporate events and social events are two completely different beasts, if I may use that word. Social events require a lot more detailing. Social events is a much longer process. Typically when you're doing a social event, your engagement with the client is almost 6 to 8 months prior to the actual event happening. And when you're dealing with a corporate, you have one boss, and what the boss says is what everyone does. In a wedding situation, everyone's a boss. The bride is the boss, her dad is the boss, the mother is the boss, the aunt is the boss, everyone's a boss. So, navigating yourself through that to kind of understand what each person really requires is a completely different skill set altogether. Now, having said that, also the number of weddings that have been happening in India over the last couple of years have been increasing drastically. So, when you have a few dates in a year, which is typically called the sour dates, when you have auspicious dates for weddings, the pressure can be as much as 1,000 to 2,000 weddings happening on that particular day. Now, out of these, obviously, not everybody needs event management companies, but even if you take, let's say, 10% of that, you're talking about 100 weddings that need professional event companies to come and manage this. And even today, as we speak, despite the fact that you've been hearing so much about social weddings and larger than life weddings and so on and so forth, the real professional companies to do this would be probably 8 or 10 all across India. So there is a huge market that exists as far as the social event space is concerned and event management companies are concerned. Now, within the wedding space, there is also a very big market that has got created in the last 8 or 10 years, which is the destination wedding space. Now, destination weddings is an area where you need expertise that typically comes only from people who are from a hospitality or a hotel background. To give you an example, in Shloka, out of our total resources that are here, almost 80% are hospitality backgrounds. Okay. Now, if you can just go to slide number 4, please. That's where I am right now. Now, fundamentally, what's happening is, you see, when it comes to spending on a wedding, there is no limit per se. I mean, even if a person has a budget X, he won't mind spending X plus 10 or X plus 15 if he feels he's getting value and he's getting something that he did not typically get before. So, you have in one wedding itself, you may have something coming from a local halwai to a Michelin star chef. Now, obviously, to handle a Michelin star chef, understanding his requirements, understanding what the kitchen requirements are, understanding, what the HACCP standards are that he's looking for, understanding the equipments that he needs, particularly if you're bringing somebody into India from a foreign country, you automatically need somebody with the requisite amount of experience. And destination weddings and destination wedding companies is where the real hospitality requirements or hospitality professional requirements come in. Destination weddings as a market is growing at about 15 to 20% a year. And my personal estimate is that this is going to grow at this level for at least another 10 years. The reason for that is very simple. As more and more weddings happen, the first choice of a family is to try and do a wedding within the city itself. Now, you're not adding hotels and venues at that pace at which the weddings are increasing, which means that the moment the person has lost all the venues in any particular city, his next option is to look for a destination. So your next destination then becomes something in India, which means you're looking at a Jaipur or a Jodhpur or a Udaipur or a Kovalam or a Goa. There is no sixth destination in India. So then you fill up these destinations. At the moment these 6 are over, that's when you look at foreign countries. So that's when your Thailand comes in, your Vietnam comes in, your Bali comes in, your Middle East comes in, and now of course Turkey and Europe, which are equally getting popular. So the moment you're dealing in a destination situation, that is where you need people who come from hospitality backgrounds. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay. Now, when you go to a destination wedding in India or abroad, 50% of your work is with the hotel that you're dealing with. Now, in a hotel, you're dealing with the front office because you've got to handle check-ins and early arrivals. Even before that, you've got to deal with the reservations in terms of, who are the people coming, what date are they arriving, what is their check-in time, what is their check-out time, whether they need transportation or don't need transportation. So there's an entire reservation process where you need somebody with the front office expertise. Then you have, the actual check-in experience where you need, again, people who have some kind of a front office background, who can understand what a check-in is all about. If you have somebody who understands Fidelio and can work with the hotel even faster because he understands the operating systems, automatically life becomes even easier for the hotel that you're working with. After the check-in experience is over, then you have food and beverage, you have room service, you have banqueting, you got events. Now, within the scope of this, it's not just a menu or it's not just a venue that you're handling. You actually have to handle the prep time, you have to handle the engineering requirements, you have to handle the HACCP requirements, you have to understand how a buffet is going to be set up, how will the buffet be serviced. If there's a bar, where do you locate the bar? Where it's convenient, because bars make a lot of mess. There's dirties to be cleared, glasses to be taken out, replenishments to come in. So how do you plan your layout in terms of where the ideal bar should be? How convenient is it to service the back areas? People with a hospitality background will always do much better in these kind of situations than they will do from anywhere else. Okay, can we move on to the next one, please? This is again to give you an idea on the numbers, on what kind of growth we can look at in the wedding space. Okay, and whether you like it or not, today event management is considered to be a real-time job. I would say till about 10 years back, you had bored, happy housewives who ran event companies because they did their kids' wedding and it went out really great and people were happy. But today it is a full-on profession. You have people who are doing really well in this profession. You've got people who made themselves celebrities in this profession. And yes, it takes time. It does take a lot of effort. By no way is it an easier job than what a hotel job is. It's equally demanding. It's equally detailed. But having said that, it's also a huge career opportunity because let's say your passion is, to be associated with multiple factors of, the hotel departments as we typically understand them. Now, when you get into a hotel, let's say you join the front office, you'll remain there for 5-6 years of your life before you move on to something else. So you really can't make a transition from front office to F&B or from F&B to the kitchen. But event management spaces give you that leeway of working in different departments associated with the hotel in different facets of an event. So we've had people in our team, for example, who started out in front office, but then they found that their inclination actually lies towards managing venues, and they made that transition. Similarly, we had people who were in logistics who are now in front office. So you have a chance of getting very different exposures and very different, getting your hands dirty, so to speak. And it's not just a pure management job. It is something that you need to be involved with, and you can actually understand the inner workings that are required as far as your day-to-day operations are concerned. Can we move on to the next one, please? Now, just to give you an example, Sandeep can probably corroborate this, but we've already had a great experience with Varitya where we've taken a lot of your seniors and a lot of people from your college to come and work with us as interns. In fact, one of the people from your earlier batches went as high as becoming a director in a company and was actually handling international projects completely on his own. We have found that people from hospitality industry have done very, very well as far as, at least our company is concerned. Any event management company that has a customer focus and a client focus will tend to recruit people from hospitality businesses. I've seen a lot of other event companies also now which are hiring banquet managers, hiring front office managers, hiring reservation managers into their scheme of things so that work becomes easier and becomes a little more detailed. Can we move on to the next one, please? Okay, so that's pretty much as far as the gyan, so to speak, that I had to give you guys. Any questions that you all want? I prefer to work in that format where you can ask me questions and I can give you answers. So please feel free and shoot as many questions as you would like.
Mr. Johar, there is actually a question from Mr. Amrit Pandey.
Yes.
He's asking, with terms like sanitation and social distancing becoming the minimum requirement, how does an event management company complies with these changes?
Okay. Very good question, Amrit. And I would like to answer this very simply by telling you that as a company, we have already been following the HACCP and the sanitation guidelines that have been laid down way back in time. Now, if you actually see the COVID guidelines, it is no different from what you're required to have been doing anyway. You were supposed to have a clean hygienic sanitized room. You were supposed to have an ultraviolet tested room before a guest checks in as per 5-star luxury standards. You were supposed to run a buffet for 4 hours. You were supposed to ensure that your compliances in terms of minimum dressing, etc., and nobody with a fever or a cold was allowed to come into the front office areas or service areas anyway. So I don't understand why people are talking about new norms and new sanitation requirements. These have existed even before COVID. It's just that people are talking about it a lot more now than what they were talking earlier. But there is really no new there's no new sanitation guideline that's coming. Coming to the point of social distancing, I don't think this is a norm that's going to remain for very long. I don't even think that this is a norm that is correct in the first place. Anyway, when you were doing large events in the past, you always calculated a minimum 5 to 8 square feet per person as your thumb rule, because if you had 10,000 square feet of area, that was ideal for 500 people. So you were following a certain guideline in terms of social distancing anyway. But are you going to now turn around and say that a person has to keep 2 meters of distance between the next person? I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. So we would not like to work in these circumstances. We also believe that these circumstances are not going to remain forever. COVID is a virus that's just going to be like any other virus, and it's a question of time before things come back to normal. Answering question 2 in terms of what extent will banqueting style service be influenced by waiter service? Look, in large gatherings of 10,000, 15,000 or even 1,000 people, you really have to go into banquet style service anyway. You will have your pass around snacks, you will have your pass around drinks, and people just have to accept it for what it is. There is you really can't get into a situation where everybody has to walk to a bar to go and get himself a drink. What guarantee is there that it is only a service staff that's carrying a virus and not a guest? There's no answer to these questions. And how much time do you assume it will take for people to get back to the new normal? Because as a matter of fact, people will get used to this. You're absolutely correct. People will get used to it. I think people are already quite bored and frustrated about the fact that we live alone at home for all these months. We're already having people talking about large weddings happening as early as November and December. And people just have to get used to it, and people have to understand that it's getting coronas like getting pneumonia or getting any other virus, and you have to stay at home and take medicines and get okay. That's it. So I hope I've answered your questions, Amrit. Is there anything else you'd like to ask as a follow-up on this before I move on to the next question? Okay, I'm now moving on to the next question that is asked by Abhay. How do you think this crisis is affecting event management, like no gatherings allowed? Guests somewhere will ignore even outside food. So do you think this will be down for some time? Yes, it is already down, Abhay, to answer your question. We've actually had no business happening anywhere in the last 4 months. I personally believe that this will last for another 2 months or so. But then I believe by November, everything will be back to normal. So I do believe that it's a temporary phenomenon, and it's a blip in the larger scheme of things, and it's a question of time before things will be back to normal. Kabir, my question is that I have to open my own company, and I started work on that too. But sir, as a beginner, what should one have to do to open a company? Kabir, I would request you to take this with me offline. You can take my email address from anybody and send me a mail, because I think I need to understand a little more about what really you have in mind. What kind of business are you looking at doing? Because the starting process of a social company versus a corporate company versus an activation company are completely different. So I need to get a little more details in terms of understanding what you have in mind. So if you can send me an email, it will be great. Your follow-up question is, can you please share your experience as to how you have entered this industry? Okay, so I used to be with the Taj for many, many years. And my last job was as resident manager of Taj Bengal in Calcutta. And I felt that I needed to move on and do something else with my life. And in 2010, I made the shift into destination events. And I was in a partnership with 2 other people between 2011 and 2013. and I went completely solo in 2014 with my own company and my own team. So I also have a hospitality background, and I also was, in fact, Sandeep and I were classmates. And I have to say that he was far more intelligent than me, and I've always kind of looked up to him in terms of getting marks, but I never got there. But that's really my background and how I got into event management. Is there anything else you'd like to ask on this before I move on to Varun Jaggi's question? After conducting an event on campus with my team, I have realized that there's little room for last minute changes when it is formalized in a way. Is this a myth? How do companies approach it? Varun, honestly speaking, last minute changes are always a problem. We also find this to be a challenge in our day-to-day work. I mean, even though we've been 10 years in the business, we also find last minute changes are a bit of an issue, which is why we believe that 80% of the event is over actually before the event even begins. And it's very important for you to sit down with your stakeholders and run over everything in the minutest possible detail so that you can get a clear idea of what you're delivering and what they should expect. Yes, in a last minute, you can possibly change by saying, okay, maybe we are running short of seats and add 20 more chairs. Or you can say that, okay, fine, maybe we need to add some more florals in one particular arrangement and make it look a little grander. You can possibly change the music track. But if you're going to talk about changing an entire layout or changing an entire location or changing an entire setup, that can't happen. Because typically for large setups, you need minimum 24 hours of prep time. So yes, you can do last minute changes, but to a very limited extent. But the way to handle this is to be as detailed as possible when you're sitting with your stakeholders prior to the event beginning. The biggest thing that you actually have to factor in terms of last minute changes is when you're dealing with rain in an outdoor situation. That is where your biggest challenge comes in. But again, there you need to plan beforehand in terms of planning a plan B, that, if you're outdoor and you feel that there's going to be rain on that particular day, which is a call you typically need to take 24 or 48 hours before. And then you need to move your location before you start your setup. Now, when you're doing that, you also need to be clear with your client or your stakeholder to let him know that, look, once we take a decision to move, it cannot be that day in the morning we see that there's sunshine and there's no rain, so let's go back to what we had originally planned. That can't happen. So it's all about taking your stakeholders into confidence and making sure that you're well planned for a plan A and a plan B. But last minute changes, always a problem. You got to deal with it. Okay. If there's any more question you'd like to ask Varun on this, or can I move on to the next one?
Sir, just one more question, sir. What is the best method, in your opinion, to control costs related to the event, especially the small costs that usually go unnoticed during the event, sir?
Can you give me an example?
So, like, for example, I related to my previous question, sir, like last minute cost, for example, if you have to buy some new flower arrangements and if you have to arrange it within the same day. So that usually is the time where we don't look at the cost part in a very detailed manner as compared to the time when we are actually planning the event, which is beforehand the event.
So Varun, the way we do it in our company is when we're dealing with a client, we always take, let's say the project cost is 100 rupees. We always keep a 5% contingency fund.
Okay.
Because, last minute things can happen. It can happen that you need some more flowers. It can happen that you run out of vodka and you need to buy more vodka. So you keep a 5% buffer where you, let's say, have collected 100 rupees for the client and you return back 100 rupees either in the form of money or in form of bills.
Yes, sir.
So that's the way you plan for contingency expenses. But my bigger recommendation to you would be, don't try to control cost, but always try and control waste. When you're doing temporary setups of the nature that we're doing, you're setting up a venue today and it's going to be torn down and it's going to be returned back to the hotel as an empty banquet space tomorrow. So it's more important for you to control waste rather than controlling cost.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully I've answered both your questions.
Definitely. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. I'm moving on to Karthik's question. I wanted to ask, what are the possibilities to enter this industry? Are there any authentic studies and degrees that we should pursue or enroll in this industry? As the Union Grant Commission has now legalized to study for multiple degrees at the same time, can you please flash over these topics? Okay, to be very honest with you, Karthik, there are a few event management colleges that I'm seeing springing up. Do I endorse any of them? My answer is no. basically, I don't think there's any quality institute that has come up yet in India as far as event management is concerned. Having said that, I think coming from a hospitality background, you're already 80% there. All that you really need to, kind of hone up or brush up when you move from a hospitality training into a event management job is understanding two components. One is production, which means production of a venue, both in terms of structure and in terms of audio visuals and technicals. And the second is understanding how to manage artists. Both these are skills that you can very much pick up along the way as you move on. I've never seen a smart hospitality student not being able to cope with it. But at this stage, if you want to get into the event business, I would say it's better to join the hospitality business where you have a recognized education system. Why should be an event management college where there's zero recognition? I don't even know what they teach you, and then you limit yourself in terms of a career option with a hotel. So I would not advise any kind of hospitality education at this point, and any kind of event management education at this stage, because there really isn't any. And I don't want to say something today which is factually incorrect, and I end up cutting a sorry figure later. Okay. Any other questions you have as a follow up on this, Karthik? Abhi Kumar has asked, with this pandemic going on, will we be getting an opportunity to work with your esteemed brand anytime soon? Thank you so much for the compliment. And yes, as a preferred choice, we have always looked at Viditya for giving us interns. We've had some wonderful working relationships with them. Some of your seniors have even worked with us on a full-time basis and have done exceedingly well with us. So as in, we are looking at a busy winter ahead in the coming December, January, February months. So we will be in touch with your college placement cell for interns, and you can apply with them and we can take it forward from there. And we look forward to welcoming all of you and your colleagues to come and work with us. Any follow-up question on this?
No, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yashvi Nirula. Sir, I'm in the 12th and I wanted to ask which degree should I take in college in order to start a business like this? Well, I would suggest, depending on the scope of the kind of company you want to start with, I would say probably start with the hospitality education in the first 3 years and complete your 3-year hospitality education. You can probably work with a good reputed event management company in India or abroad for 2-3 years to kind of understand the business a little better. The key gap would then be that you may understand the operational side of the business, but you may not know the business side of the business. So you can probably follow with a 1-year degree in a master's in business or something like that. And I think you're good to go after that. So any follow-up question you have on this, Yashvi, before I can move on? Okay. Anshdeep Gulati is asking, I would like to ask, when you handle multiple events at the same time, how do you prioritize store time and resource to meet the critical deadlines? Very good question, Anshdeep. This is a question all my clients ask me every time I meet them. We as a company are probably one of the few companies in Asia that has the capacity to execute multiple projects in multiple countries at the same time. How do we prioritize this? Well, for us, all are equally important. So we make sure that we have a balanced and effective team for all the locations. But within that team, we may change the composition depending on the requirements. So if a particular project has more production and less of, if there's a bigger production in one, we will send a stronger production team to the other one. If there is one which has got a more food and beverage inclination to it, we will send stronger food and beverage resources there. But fundamentally, we don't have any difference in terms of priority. They're all equally important. We make sure that we have adequate resources allocated to all of them, but the allocation of the resources will change depending on what the individual requirements are. Okay, Anshdeep Gulati's question is answered. Any more follow-up question you have on this, Anshdeep? Okay, Abhishek Seni. I would like to ask that when you I heard that when management companies don't normally hire candidates permanently, rather they hire teams as freelancers. What are your views about job security in this field? It's a very good question, Abhishek, and I'm very happy that you asked this question. You are absolutely right. Most, I would say 90% of event management companies actually work on this whole freelancer concept. We as a company don't work on this concept. and we actually have probably one of the biggest in-house teams in the business, which is why we are what we are in terms of delivering for our clients. There is a certain consistency that comes in only with a permanent team. Yes, we also hire a few freelancers, but they are not the core to our operation. The freelancers are actually people we bring in to kind of support the ancillary departments that we have. And it's also for us to identify talent for the future when we want to recruit. But yes, largely the event management companies do tend to work on a freelancer basis. So it is important for you to find a company that offers you full-time employment. And if you are in a company that offers you full-time employment and you're good, you will never get sacked. You can be rest assured on that. But yes, this is the prevailing trend of hiring freelancers. I don't personally subscribe to this at all. And your seniors who would have worked with us will tell you that we have a very, very large in-house team. And any company that really wants to do well in this business, they will have to take an in-house team. You can't work with freelancers. If you want to ensure a certain delivery, you need people who are permanently on your payrolls and who are trained by you and are guided by you and are following your brand values. Any follow-up question on this? Okay. I really like the questions you guys are asking. They're very, very good questions. Muskan is asking, having more guests or attendees than we planned for in an event, is it a mistake or is it an unavoidable situation? It's a little bit of both, actually, depending on what kind of a client you're dealing with. It's always very important to sit down with your client and ask a very, upfront question in terms of how many people he's expecting. And as you keep planning the event and you start getting the guest list, and you start getting, you start following up for RSVPs and you start following up for, arrival details, etc. You will have a fair idea in terms of what kind of a turnout you can expect. So normally in a social event, you really will not have a problem like this. Where it becomes an unavoidable situation is when you're doing large corporate events where you have, incentives, or you're doing a dealer meet or something like that, where a lot more people show up than you expected. In that case, it's an unavoidable situation, and then you just have to, deliver as best as you can and try your best in terms of managing it. But typically, you can expect a 20% escalation or a 20% reduction on the day of the event in a large gathering. So 20% should not, you should factor in a 20% escalation. Anything beyond that, then you just got to pray that everything goes all well, and if you planned well, you will see it through.
So even after the 20% escalation we expected, but for example, we got 30% more, and so the organizers and the company we are dealing with, they blame us that your planning was not good enough or anything. So how should we deal at that time when the event is happening and the guests are arriving? Obviously, we cannot say no to them.
Muskan, I would like to answer this question by saying that it is very important to understand your pre-planning phase. Let's say this problem typically happens in a corporate situation. Let's say you're dealing with, for argument's sake, Larsen & Toubro, which is one of the largest companies we've dealt with. Okay. Now, Larsen & Toubro says that, we're expecting 1,000 delegates for this. Tell them, great, please give us the list, we can follow up and we can start doing RSVPs. Now, the important part is how engaged you are with your client in the pre-planning stage. So let's say 3 days before the event, you're sitting with the head of the company and you're telling him, look, we've completed the RSVPs. As per our understanding, we are expecting 1,000 people. These are the people who confirmed, these are the people who are maybe, and these are the people who said they're not coming. So if your client is aware that you've done your homework, if he's aware that you've done your detailing, and if you have that kind of a rapport with your client, you should not have this problem. Which is why I'm saying again to something I said a little while back, 80% of your job is over before the event begins. It's all about how detailed you are in the pre-planning stage. Have I answered your question? Okay, just as a thing, if any of you are writing a question and you have a follow-up question, please unmute yourself and ask me the question, because I can't scroll down to see your follow-up questions. So just unmute and ask me the question. Okay. What kind of individuals, this is Kabir Bedi's questions. what kind of individuals do you think can excel in the event management business, or maybe even go high up in the ranks if in a good multinational event company like yours? Well, you have to have presence of mind. You have to work hard. Exactly what you will do to succeed in a hospitality job is what you need to do with us. There is no rocket science here. It's any job you take anywhere, be prepared to work hard, be prepared to give it your best, and don't look at the clock when you work. I mean, that's as quickly as I can answer it. Okay. I have a very interesting question from Kabir Kohli. How can you deliver an outstanding event in a limited budget? I can't. You want an outstanding budget, you got to pay for it. It's that simple. I mean, you can't expect, something that costs 1,000 rupees to be completed in 100 rupees. You want something worth $1,000, you got to pay $1,000. It's that simple. And if you have a budget of 500 rupees, tell the client what is the best you can do in 500 rupees. After that, either he hikes up his budget or he does what you can give him in 500 rupees. That's simple. Any follow-up question on this, Kabir? Okay, Amrit Pandey, you had mentioned that you had no business in the past 4 months and do not expect the situation to get normal till November, which is another 4-5 months. In this entire 8-9 months of no business, did your company see any employee turnover? No, Amrit, we've seen absolutely zero turnover. We have not terminated any employment. We have not reduced anybody's pay, and we are not going to do that till the 31st of March 2021 anyway. So there is zero turnover as far as we are concerned. There is zero pay cut, and we're not likely to do this in the near future either. If you're a successful business and if you're planning for your clients, you got to plan for yourself. You got to understand that you could have months, even non-COVID, you can have 3-4 months where you have no business. So you have to keep a certain operating capital to run your resources and run your company. And COVID or no COVID, you got to plan ahead. So as far as our company is concerned, zero turnover, zero pay cut. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Anything else, anyone?
I think there's one more question, sir,
Sure.
by Yashvi Narula.
Yes.
Are you able to read it, sir?
Yes, I just got it. And Yashvi, there is no such thing as a silly question. Every question is a good question. And have I done any weddings? Have you organized any weddings in Udaipur? Yes, Yashvi, not one, quite a few. And my personal view on Udaipur as a destination is that it is a hopeless destination. It is overpriced, it is uncomfortable, and I don't see any value for money in it.
Okay, sir.
Any particular reason why you asked about Udaipur only? That's my question to you.
No, I just wanted to ask, I just wanted to know. That is fine.
Okay. How do you maintain liquidity in your company? I'm sorry, Varun, I don't understand your question. Maybe you can unmute yourself and elaborate a little more on what exactly you're asking.
Sir, my question is, how do you maintain the flow of cash in your company while you are working towards an event? Like when you have to spend out of the budget, where do you get the cash from? Do you have a surplus aside? Do you take it from the client? How do you take cash in and how do you
channelize it? It's a very good question, Varun, now that I understand it a little better. So fundamentally, let's say you have a project that's going to cost, for argument's sake, 1,000 rupees, right? This 1,000 rupees has a breakup. There's a hotel expense for rooms, there's a hotel expense for food and beverage, there's a expense for decoration, there's an expense for light and sound, there's an expense for artists. Now, all these come in a staggered manner. So for example, if I'm booking an artist, I have to pay 10%. 30 days before the event, I have to pay him another 40%. And I have to complete 100% of his payment on the venue. So when you make your budget, you also have to put your expense outlay in that in terms of when you have to pay what person. And you got to sit with your client and let him know that this is the budget, this is how the money is spreading out, and this is how we need to collect the money from you and pay it beyond. And we work on 100% advance. So all the money has to come into us 48 hours before the event is complete. And like when somebody asked a question, how can you control expenses which come in the end? we collect a 5% extra to manage any expenses that come in, and we give an account for the same at the end of it.
Okay, sir.
Have I answered your question, or is there anything more you want to ask?
Yes, yes. No, sir. That's it, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Anshdeep, is there any tools and software that the event management company use to increase their customers? Anshdeep, frankly speaking, if you're in the luxury event space, your entire business is going to be on word of mouth. We are only on Facebook and we are on Instagram, where we have our posts going out on a regular basis. In-house, we're largely working on Microsoft Excel, which is the most important thing for us. And I think it's very important to have a good understanding on Microsoft Excel if you want to work in this business. You also need to have a good understanding of any Corel or drawing software that you need to, to prepare your layouts, to prepare your detailing, and so on and so forth. And if you have a working knowledge of Opera or Fidelio, any such hotel operating system, that will help you as far as your destination events are concerned. So I hope I answered your question. Muskan, I have the same doubts as Varun. I hope I've clarified your doubts, Muskan. Am I audible? Am I clear?
Yes, sir. You are.
Yes, sir.
All right. My last question is, can you tell me the most difficult question asked by your guest that you have not been able to answer? Oh, many, man. There are many questions I can't answer. For example, why is an artist charging so much money? Why can't he come in lesser? I have no answer to that question, man. That's what he charges. You want him, you're going to pay. It's simple. Yeah? I mean, there's no end of ridiculous questions. You have the most bizarre ones coming. I mean, I had one where the bride was probably about 100 kilos. Yeah? And she's asking me, how can I look thin in my pictures? How can I answer that question? I have no answer. Probably go to a gym and lose 50 kilos. I mean, how else can I answer that question? So there's no end to ridiculous questions. You can be asked the most crazy ones. So nothing should surprise you when you're in this business. I really like Ritwik's question. How do you measure the success of your events? Is it based on qualitative data or quantitative? I measure the success of my business very simply. If I have an action plan that I have agreed upon with the client where I have to deliver an X amount of things, how many of those X have I delivered perfectly? Have I delivered all X perfectly? Have I delivered X minus 5 perfectly? Have I delivered X minus 10 perfectly? And that's the qualitative bit. And as far as the humane bit is concerned, how happy my client is at the end of the event and whether he has got everything that he expected out of us. That's it. I don't have any complicated parameters. I don't have 6 Sigma and 7 habits of successful people and all that garbage. I just go purely by what my customer and I agree upon, whether I've delivered that or I've not delivered that. It can even happen that when you agree with your customer on 100 things, you delivered 100 out of 100, but he's still not happy because he had some crazy thought in his mind that has not been met. So you got to benchmark against what have you agreed as a commitment and whether you met that commitment or not. Simple.
Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, I am obsessed towards my hometown. So whatever startup I have to do will be starting from there. So we have in a Punjab where we see so many villages, you think a village can be a proper destination for a great event or a destination wedding? Well, Abhay, I'm from Punjab myself, but will a village be a proper destination wedding venue? My answer is it really depends on what kind of residential capacity you have in terms of hotels. It really depends on what kind of technical infrastructure you have in terms of stage, light, sound, decor, all of that. But would you ask me if I personally would take an event to a village in India? My answer is no. We have done some very successful events in villages in Italy and in Turkey, where we kind of, we had a resort in the middle of a village and we executed it there. But you had a resort. But most villages in India don't even have proper residential and sanitation requirements. So it's really difficult to operate this in India. So personally speaking, will I take something to a village in India? My answer is no. Maybe there's some village lying somewhere which is great to do an event. Possibly there is, but I don't know about it. So yeah.
So as you can also see that
villages in Punjab. There, the mostly people there are helpful. So I think that it can be easy for us to execute an event.
Okay, Abhay, when you're evaluating a destination for an event, you need to first understand how many people are attending that event. Let's say there are 200 people. Now, 200 people on double occupancy means you need 100 quality rooms. If you don't have 100 quality rooms, you rule out the event from that particular venue then and there itself. After that, you got to look at a venue that can give you, capacity for at least 8,000 square feet, where you can have a proper entertainment, you can have a proper dining area, you can have a proper stage. So as I said, I'm not ruling out that, I'm sure there's some village somewhere that can meet all these criteria. Am I aware of it? My answer is no. Can it be done? Of course it can be done. But, does it meet the ground rules and does it meet the standards that you need? My answer is no. Muskan, you asked some very good questions actually. What if there's a compulsory expense? For example, medical assistance when anybody of the company refuses to pay for it. In that situation, will the event company pay for its own pocket or is there any other solution available? Muskan, frankly speaking, if a delegate falls sick and he needs immediate attention, you will have to provide that attention. That is why I always say keep a 5% buffer in terms of expenses from a company to handle these contingencies. But I have never come across a situation till today where somebody's needed medical assistance and the company has not paid for it, or the host has not paid for it, or the guy himself has not paid for it. But what if all of them refuse to pay? My advice to you would be, as a company that is handling the event, it's your cost of doing business. It's your reputation at stake. It's your goodwill at stake. If they don't pay for it, so be it. You will have to handle it.
Thank you, sir. That answers my question.
Okay. Devanshu Nijavan, you've probably asked a question that I ask myself every morning. What is more important, profit or a customer relationship? Both, man. You have no profit, you have no customers, you have no customers, you have no profit. It's like a chicken and an egg. But you're in the business to do business. You have to make profits and you have to make them from your customers. It's that simple. I tell every single client I meet that, look, man, your kid is getting married, but I'm in the business. I am going to make money. So you got to deal with it. But as long as you're reasonable, as long as you are keeping your profit lines within limits, and as long as you're realistic about what kind of profits you want to make, you'll never have a problem with this. But both are equally important. You can't have one over the other in my mind. So I hope that answers your question, Devanshu.
I think we've reached the end of the question, sir. And it's almost the end of the timeline that we had given you already.
Sure.
Thank you so much. It was definitely a very knowledgeable session, Mr. Johar, and thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule and addressing our students. Event management has been, the closest to heart topic for our students anytime. So this is definitely a very insightful session for them. Anything that you'd like to say to them as an end note, maybe?
Rashmi, I can just tell you that, I'm not one of those people who sugarcoats anything. I'll give you facts the way they're meant to be given. You may or may not like what I say, but if you'll expect nothing but the answers that I personally believe in. So if I've upset a thought process anywhere, I apologize, but then this is what the real world is all about. And I wish you guys all the best. We've had some great experiences with your college and we've had some great experiences with your students. And we hope that we recruit some of you sooner than later. And you come and work with us the first given opportunity.
Sure, they're all waiting for the same, sir.
Yeah, we'll be in touch quite soon, actually, Rashmi. I think we were in touch with your college we've not been in touch for about a year, but otherwise, all good.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Johar. Thank you so much for being here.
If any of your students have any follow-up questions or would like to ask anything else, please share my email ID with them. I'll be more than happy to answer anything that they may want to ask.
Definitely, sir. I will definitely share your details with them. And I see a lot of thank yous pouring in for you. So this definitely shows how much they enjoyed.
Okay. Okay, that's great.
Thank you so much,
Alright.
Mr. Johar. And
Pleasure.
we'd love to see you on the campus as soon as the situation settles down a bit.
Sure.
Thank
Take care,
you so
guys.
much,
Thank
sir.
you for the chance to
Take
speak to
care,
you.
sir. Good day. Thank you, students. Have a good day, everyone.